Hello and welcome to WION World is One. My name is Priyanka Sharma. On this special broadcast of the WION-VOA Co-Production, we'll discuss President Joe Biden's West Asia tour. From trying to make Saudi Arabia a pariah earlier, he's now trying to reset all Gulf ties. High-stakes diplomacy is currently underway. President Biden and Israeli acting Prime Minister Yair Lapid publicly differed on the best approach to counter the threat of Iran's nuclear weapons program as the two leaders signed a joint security declaration. White House Bureau Chief Patsy Widakuswara is travelling with the president, and she has this latest report from Jerusalem. Take a look.
An Israeli Presidential Medal of Honor awarded to U.S. President Joe Biden. But earlier Thursday, a public disagreement between Biden and acting Prime Minister Yair Lapid about how to stop Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons.
Diplomacy will not stop them. The only thing that will stop Iran is knowing that if they continue to develop their nuclear program, the free world will use force. The only way to stop them is to put a credible military threat on the table.
Biden said a nuclear weapons-free Iran is a vital security interest for the U.S. and Israel, but
I continue to believe that diplomacy is the best way to achieve this outcome.
Israel opposed the 2015 deal to restrict Iran's nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. The U.S. is trying to get Tehran back to the agreement, including through indirect talks in Vienna. Tehran maintains its nuclear program is peaceful and for energy production. After Biden and Lapid signed the Jerusalem Declaration on Joint Security, committing never to allow Iran to acquire a nuclear weapon, a warning came from Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi.
I tell the Americans and their regional allies that the Iranian nation will not accept any crisis or insecurity in the region, and that any mistake made in this region will be met with a harsh and regrettable response.
To counter Iran, Washington is pushing for deeper ties between Israel and its Arab neighbors, including the ongoing process of integrating the region's missile defense systems.
It means that each of the countries will have more time to respond, which gives them more options, which helps the United States to contain conflicts because there's more time to deal with things.
Also Thursday, Biden and Lapid joined a virtual summit of the I2U2, a new partnership between India, Israel, the United Arab Emirates, and the U.S. to address food security and clean energy. Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News, Jerusalem.
For more analysis, joining us now is VOA's correspondent Jessica Stone. She's live with us from Washington. Jessica, thanks for joining us. Now, Patsy's report mentioned the I2U2 meeting, of course, which consists of the US, the UAE, along with India. And, of course, tell us more about this big development. What was on the agenda? What were the prime takeaways?
Well, I think the overarching takeaway that I have from watching this take place is that there really is a movement away from isolationism and towards multilateralism in terms of U.S. foreign policy. And of course, that's a refreshing change for much of the world after 4 years of an isolationist in the White House. So reemergence of the multilateral approach is something we're seeing with this I2U2 group. Of course, this one is economically focused. It's going to allow technology sharing and investment across these borders. And it's been of great benefit, according to the readout that we got to India, because there's going to be significant investment in some green technology, some farming and sustainable farming practice experimentation. Indians are providing the land. The Israelis and Americans are providing some technology, as well as the UAE. So I think that it is also important to just underscore the context of this, because the Negev Forum is also an integration effort between Israel and the Arab states. So all of this is really moving in a direction where the Middle East itself will be much more integrated and multilateral. And that is going to be a refreshing change for foreign policy apparatus here in Washington. It's something that we haven't seen.
Absolutely, Jessica. The next leg of President Biden's trip is to Saudi Arabia, which is being scrutinized across the world. The death of Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi is, of course, going to be a major controversial topic. Do we expect the president to bring that up?
It is unclear exactly whether we'll hear about him bringing it up, but it is also highly unlikely. Part of this visit really signals the realization here in Washington that Crown Prince Salman will become the king in Saudi Arabia, and Washington will have to learn to live with dealing with him as the leader of that country. Saudi Arabia has not yet joined the Abraham Accords, and of course the U.S. would like them to. And Saudi Arabia is a leader in the region. So as they begin to lean towards further integration with Israel, we don't expect an announcement about normalization of relations completely, but they are moving in that direction, and they are a leader in the region in that way. So Biden really also is there because he feels like he needs to pull Saudi Arabia back into the orbit of the West. The Saudis have been sending a lot of their oil to China. In fact, China imports of Saudi oil have gone up 38%. And of course, the U.S. is concerned about anyone who's having close relationships with Russia at a time like this where there is this invasion in Ukraine.
Jessica, thanks so much for all those inputs. Stay with us on this broadcast. We'll come back to you for your inputs on another story. The directors of British and U.S. intelligence services say that businesses should not underestimate Beijing's commitment to use espionage to steal intellectual property. At issue, balancing the need for foreign-born research talent to maintain an innovative edge over China while protecting national and economic security. VOA's Jessica Stone has this report.
We are losing ground in a number of areas.
As Washington lawmakers debate ways to give America the edge in the technology race with China,
Xi Jinping is watching us and hopes that we are unsuccessful.
U.S. research universities are on the front lines. Studies show more than 3 out of 4 international scholars are conducting scientific research here. The U.S. lacks enough homegrown science graduates to do the work.
Many of those graduates, those phenomenal PhDs, are leaving the country after they graduate because of immigration issues.
Carrie Bingen is the former Deputy Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security. She's one of 18 former U.S. national security officials who signed this letter calling on Congress to lift limits on immigrants with advanced degrees in science and technology.
If we're going to win this technology competition, we need the best brains from within the United States and globally.
But security experts say Beijing actively exploits America's reliance on foreign talent.
They have sent individuals here to the United States, both in the form of researchers, in the form of students. They've sent temporary visitors to the United States, and frankly, they've co-opted Americans in academic institutions and the like through their Thousand Talents program in an effort to steal American intellectual property.
58-year-old Ohio State professor Songwo Jung admitted he hid his involvement in Chinese talent recruitment efforts so he could use millions in U.S. government grants to develop China's medical expertise. He's now serving 3 years in prison. FBI Director Christopher Wray issued an urgent warning to businesses in a joint appearance with the chief of Britain's domestic intelligence agency, MI5.
The Chinese government is set on stealing your technology, whatever it is that makes your industry tick, and using it to undercut your business and dominate your market.
Beijing had an immediate response.
This intelligence official's remarks fully expose his deep-rooted Cold War mentality and ideological prejudice.
If I were leading a research university, I would want to be taking a hard look at.
Former Education Department advisor Dan Carell says universities and grant-making entities must develop more safeguards to protect sensitive research. Right now, he says there's no blueprint for vetting international researchers.
There really is not a system, honestly, for reviewing, and certainly not for previewing, right, vetting on the front end, how this happens, what people are involved.
Experts say developing that system now is critical for America's future.
We are in a technology race with China, and there is a serious risk of us losing.
Jessica Stone, VOA News, Washington.
We still have Voice of America's Jessica Stone with us live from Washington. Jessica, according to you, we just saw a report. What are the chances of this package passing?
Well, time is certainly running out before all these lawmakers leave Washington to campaign in their districts for re-election. And so that's putting a lot of pressure on them to get something done. What it looks like is going to possibly get done is a much narrower version where we won't see these immigration issues that I brought up in the piece addressed, but we will see some investment in semiconductor manufacturing, not a $52 billion investment, which has been bandied about, but a smaller tax credit going to them. And this could, it looks likely this could go to a vote next week on Tuesday. Senate Majority Leader of New York, Chuck Schumer, wants to get it to the floor, wants to give the White House a win because the White House believes that they need to do something about inflation. And I think the American voters and the polling certainly shows that. And they say that they can make a case that this is going to touch that issue because they would be investing in domestic semiconductor manufacturing. And as you know, chips are in not plentiful supply in some parts of the world, and that's impacting prices.
Right. Jessica, in the recent meeting between Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi and Secretary of State, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, Yi asked Washington to lift the Trump-era tariffs on Beijing. Are we any closer to getting a decision from the Biden administration?
I think we are closer, but it appears that the president is going to need to continue to be pushed and make a final decision by the factions in his White House that are saying, hey, if you do this, you're going to look weak. Others are saying, no, you need to do this to tamp down inflation. And the reality is we are still looking at a much narrower version of lifting the tariffs than China wants. We're looking at possibly about $10 billion being impacted out of $350 billion in tariffs. Those are the numbers that are being rumored here in Washington. And, you know, while eliminating tariffs wouldn't have a huge impact, it would have some impact, particularly on consumer goods, and that is what drives voters, of course, to the polls. As I said, inflation concerns are high in the minds of voters, high in the minds of those at the White House. They want to say they're doing something, and this would be a way to do it. The politics of this are still pretty complicated for the White House because he's getting a lot of pressure from labor unions. The First Lady meeting today with a couple of them who do not want the tariffs lifted, who think that lifting them will come at the expense of American workers. And Democratic voters are waffling. We have a poll from Morning Consult that says 47% of Democrats want to keep the tariffs, while 24% of them want to lift them. So it's a complicated needle to thread for the White House, but we do think we're going to get a decision soon, if nothing else, because they want to send the party back to the district, as I said, for these upcoming fall elections with a win in their pocket.
Jessica Stone, thank you so much for all those insights. Thanks for joining us on this special broadcast on WION.